if you think about ancient Rome, you're probably picturing, the steel of the legions, the marble temples, the roar of the Colosseum.
Right.
But what if the entire machinery of that empire, from war to religion, ran on a very specific soundtrack?
It's really not an exaggeration. Music in Rome wasn't just entertainment. It was a tool, a powerful, functional tool for communication, for control.
So that's what we're digging into today, the actual soundscape of the Roman world. What they listened to, what they built.
And why sound was just as important to the empire as, say, its engineers or its generals.
Okay, so let's unpack that. First thing to know is that they weren't exactly original, were they? They were very good borrowers.
Oh, absolutely. They absorbed influences from the local Etruscans, for sure. But their real musical foundation, the intellectual part, that came from Greece. For a Roman, adopting Greek music theory was a sign that you were civilized, that you were educated.
Which means the music itself wasn't complicated, not in the way we think of a modern symphony.
Not at all. For the most part, it was what we call monophonic.
And what does that mean in simple terms?
Think of it this way. Music can be horizontal, which is a single melody line, or it can be vertical, with complex harmonies and chords all stacked up.
Okay.
Roman music was almost entirely horizontal. Just one primary melody, sung or played. You didn't have multiple interlocking melodies. That kind of thing wouldn't develop for centuries.
So the focus was always on that one single clear line. What about the rhythm?
The rhythm was usually pretty simple and very functional. It was tied directly to the meter of the poetry they were reciting or the steps of a dance. It had to be predictable.
But I'm guessing that changed as the empire got bigger.
It did. As Rome expanded, their music became incredibly diverse. They started pulling in styles from all over the Mediterranean, from Egypt, North Africa, you name it. It became this fascinating blend of sounds.
Okay, so if you're trying to command an army of thousands, you need something that can cut through pure chaos.
Exactly. And that brings us to the brass instruments. This was the loud, literal voice of Roman authority.
This is where music isn't just art, it's a critical tool.
Utterly critical. These instruments were all about volume, not subtlety. There were three major ones.
Let's start with the tuba. Now, when I hear that word, I'm picturing the huge coiled instrument in a modern marching band. Is the Roman tuba anything like that?
No, not at all. The Roman tuba was this long, straight, bronze trumpet, sometimes over 4 feet long.
4 feet.
Yeah. And its only purpose was projection. It made this piercing, loud sound that was used just for signaling troops on a noisy battlefield or for big public events.
Okay, then there's the cornu. I've seen pictures of that. It's that massive circular horn that actually wraps around the musician's body.
It's an amazing sight. It looked less like an instrument and more like a wearable bronze plumbing.
Ah, right.
The cornu was mostly for processions, formal parades. It added this, weight and spectacle. And then there was a smaller one, the buccina.
The smaller curved horn.
Right. Specifically used in military camps to announce the changing of the night watch. It was basically the camp's alarm clock.
Now, these ancient horns didn't have valves, the buttons on a modern trumpet that help you change the pitch. So how did they play complex signals?
That's what made them so difficult to play. It was all breath control. The musician had to control the pitch completely with the tension in their lips, what we call the embouchure, and the force of their breath.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It took years of practice. It made these players, the aeneators, a special rank. They weren't just musicians, they were a high-ranking signal corps, the Army's original secure communication system.
And these signals were specific commands.
They're very specific.
Huh.
When to wake up, when to eat, when to advance, form a defensive square, when to retreat. Coordinating thousands of soldiers would have been impossible without the aeneators.
And they had drums too, right? To keep everyone in step.
Yep, heavy rhythmic drums to keep the legions marching at a steady pace over huge distances. Crucial for logistics and morale.
So when a victorious army marched back into Rome, that deafening sound of the horns wasn't just noise, it was the sound of organization, of military power.
It was the sound of conquest, broadcasting Roman authority to everyone who could hear it.
So we've heard how massive volume controlled armies. But let's shift from the battlefield to, say, a quiet Roman villa. If brass instruments signaled war, the strings signaled something else entirely.
Wealth, refinement, and a kind of private culture. We're moving into the instruments you'd associate with poetry, theater, and a good education.
And the biggest of these was the kithara.
The kithara, yes. It was a huge, really ornate version of the lyre. This was an instrument for professionals.
So these are the rock stars of the ancient world.
Exactly. You'd see the kithara in public concerts or big theatrical performances. The players often used a small tool called a plectrum to pluck the strings.
What did that do?
It gave the instrument a very clear, cutting, projected sound. It's much louder than just using your fingers.
And then there was the smaller version, the lyre itself, that was more for home use, right?
Right. The lyre was what you learned on. It was a marker of good breeding. For a young Roman, learning a stringed instrument was as important as learning rhetoric. It showed you had taste.
And there was another one, the pandura.
Yes, an early kind of lute. It had a long neck and a small body, so a very different style of playing from the lyre.
What's really interesting to me is the construction. The strings weren't metal like ours today.
No, not at all. They were traditionally made from animal gut, usually sheep intestine or plant fibers.
And that must have changed the sound completely.
It did. It gave them this wonderfully warm, soft, resonant tone. Much less piercing than modern nylon or steel strings.
Right.
Perfect for playing indoors.
Which is where you'd hear it at those famous Roman dinner parties, the banquets.
Absolutely. Wealthy Romans would have soft tunes played on a lyre or a flute during dinner. It was a way for the host to show off, really, to display their wealth and their refined cosmopolitan taste.
But it wasn't a concert.
No, the music was atmosphere. You'd have hired musicians and singers performing while guests reclined, but the music was deliberately kept soft. It was meant to complement the conversation, not dominate it. If the music was too loud, it actually showed the host lacked sophistication.
That's a great insight, and guests sometimes joined in.
They did, with small handheld percussion, like the sistrum. It's a kind of metal rattle they borrowed from Egyptian tradition. It shows music wasn't just something you listened to, it was interactive.
Okay, let's turn to some of the really amazing technical achievements. This is where we see the sheer engineering might of the Romans, starting with an instrument called the tibia.
The tibia is completely unique. It wasn't one pipe, it was two separate pipes, played at the same time by one musician.
Wait, two pipes at once? How is that even possible?
It's incredibly difficult. You have to coordinate air pressure and finger movements across two different instruments at the exact same time.
How did they manage the airflow without just passing out?
They had a clever device. The musician often wore this leather strap called a forbea around their face. It looked a bit like a muzzle, and it helped them maintain enough pressure to keep a strong, constant stream of air flowing into both pipes.
And this instrument wasn't just for entertainment, it had a really important ritual role.
A profoundly important role, especially during sacrifices.
Why was it so key for religious purity?
Well, this gets into the connection between music and superstition. During a sacrifice, which was this critical moment of communication with the gods, the Romans believed that any unexpected or unlucky
A
noise,
sneeze. Or a dog barking.
exactly, a sneeze, a shout, anything like that could pollute the ceremony and just negate the whole ritual.
So the tibia's job was to create a kind of sonic blanket to protect the ceremony.
Precisely. The loud, continuous sound of the double-pipe tibia was used specifically to drown out any of that ambient, profane noise. It kept the ceremony pure.
Beyond that, you also had simpler instruments, like the fistula panpipes, basically.
Right, very common with shepherds. But the real technical highlight, the thing that shows Roman engineering power, has to be the hydraulis.
The water organ. This sounds incredible.
It is arguably the most impressive technical achievement in ancient music. It was a true mix of engineering and art.
So how did they build an organ without electricity?
They used the power of water. Water was pumped into a chamber, and the weight and pressure of that water was used to compress air. That pressurized air was then fed through a series of tuned metal pipes. It was brilliant.
And it had a keyboard.
Yes, the keyboard. The player used it to open and close valves, which controlled where the air flowed. You could play complex melodies, even chords, and because it used so much air pressure, it was incredibly loud.
Which means you could only use it in the biggest menus.
Absolutely. The hydraulis was for massive outdoor places like the Colosseum during gladiatorial games, or the Circus Maximus for the chariot races. It was the ancient world's stadium organ.
Building the hype.
Building hype. Announcing big moments in the games, adding dramatic tension. Just building and maintaining one of these things required highly skilled mechanics. It proves how seriously they took music technology.
So whether it's the force of that water organ or the purity of the tibia, music was just fundamental to their culture, from the stage to the temple.
It really was. Roman plays were basically what we would call musicals. They weren't just spoken dialogue. They were full of songs, dances, and actors who specialized in singing these long, elaborate solos.
And the chorus was more than just background noise.
Much more. They used rhythmic chanting and movement to help guide the audience through the plot. And we have to credit the engineers again for the acoustics in the theaters.
They were designed so everyone could hear.
They were designed specifically so the music could reach the very top rows. It meant that this high art was accessible to everyone, no matter where you were sitting.
And this all connects to their spiritual lives, too. Music was essential in almost every ceremony.
It was required. They composed special hymns for their many, many gods. The Romans genuinely believed the gods enjoyed hearing music and that it made sure their prayers were heard.
My favorite example has to be the Soleil priests.
Oh, they're fantastic. The Soleil priests didn't just sing, they performed this famous, really energetic jumping dance while rhythmically clashing their shields together. It was this huge visual and sonic expression of devotion.
And this importance also fueled big public competitions, right?
Yes, at major festivals like the Capitoline Games, musicians would come from all across the empire to compete for prizes for wreaths of oak or laurel. It kept the arts alive and kept the citizens happy, which was a key part of state management.
So even though we don't have the sheet music, their legacy is huge.
It's profound.
Yeah.
Many of their basic instrument designs, the brass family, the woodwinds, the keyboard organ, they're the direct ancestors of instruments we have in modern orchestras today.
And what about for the military?
Critically, their systematic focus on using music for precise military communication, those clear brass signals that influenced armies for over 1,000 years, all the way up to the modern bugle call.
So what this all means for you is that Roman music was never just background noise. It was like the essential operating system for their entire society, directing armies, honoring gods, celebrating power.
That's it. So the next time you hear a marching band or see an orchestral trumpet, just remember that powerful sound first rang out, commanding Roman legions 2,000 years ago.
Good luck with your studies.